Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to forego what I had actually planned to talk about today and discuss some breaking news. If you've been paying attention, or even if you haven't been paying attention, Derek Chauvin has just been sentenced. The gentleman that knelt on the neck of George Floyd, and I use the word gentleman very loosely here, he has been sentenced. And he was sentenced to 22 and a half years. That seems like a pretty good sentence to me. Long sentence. Now, with good behavior, etc., he'll serve 2/3 of that, so about 15 years. So he's basically gotten a 15-year sentence now. Well, the issue now is whether people are going to think that's enough and whether some people think that's too much. It seems like you're going to have people on both sides of the argument, but I think the people that everyone was most worried about are the ones that are going to say, that's not enough, and are going to riot. Well, to those people I say, 15 years. Imagine 15 years of your life in prison, especially as an ex-law enforcement officer. Not going to be a cakewalk for the man. And let's also get one thing clear. My own personal opinion. I'm not saying this is fact or law or anything. I'm just going to say, I don't believe he intended to kill the guy. He didn't intentionally kill him. He did so through negligence. He's probably done that to 100 people. I'm not defending that. I'm saying that's awful. He's a horrible cop and he should be off the force. A lot of them should be off the force because a lot of them do shit like that, kneel on people's necks, etc. Break protocol, break their own rules. But luckily for him, probably the other 100 people he's done it to were young and healthy, and they survived the experience. In this case, or maybe some of them didn't, just wasn't on film. But in this case, it was on film, and George Floyd had issues. He had contributing issues. And I'm not saying that those are in any way an excuse for Chauvin, because what he did was negligent. And because George Floyd had these conditions, he was not in good health, he was older, etc. Because of these conditions, it killed him. This abuse killed him. It was still abuse. Even if he'd been totally healthy and got out fine, if someone had filmed that, I still think Derek Chauvin should have gone to jail for a couple of years and been off the force, because that was abuse. But in this case, the person he was abusing, like he probably abused people many times before, had these pre-existing conditions that cost him his life when combined with what was happening. So I don't think that is the same as someone intentionally murdering someone. Like going out and saying, I'm going to end your life out of malice. No, this was just, he felt a sense of superiority and a sense of could do no wrong. And he'd done it before. And, and he's the cop. He's the one that knows everything. That was what contributed to this. It wasn't malice. It wasn't like, I'm going to kill you. I want you dead. It was none of that stuff, which I think is necessary for it to be the really big sentences. It's like Van Jones was complaining on CNN, and he's like one of the worst people in the world as far as I'm concerned. But he was like, 15 years is just not enough. It's not nearly enough. Should have been at least twice that. And his point was George Floyd's life is worth more than that to his family. Well, for one, being a realist and having people in my family that are very much like George Floyd, irresponsible parents, just irresponsible people, drug addicts, kind of a drain on the family. Because let's not deify George Floyd. I'm so sick of the building statues in his honor and big busts and stuff and murals. George Floyd wasn't the point here. The point is police brutalizing people. George Floyd is not some angel that they attacked out of nowhere. George Floyd was a very flawed person. Let's quit deifying these people after they get harmed, especially when they cause the interaction with the police. They're not usually innocent people. They're usually committing a crime. They've usually got issues, etc. And then the police take it too far. So the thing we should be holding the police accountable for is taking it too far. And it's the issue with the police. We don't need to deify people like George Floyd. He was nowhere near a saint, period. And as far as what he was worth to his family, as someone, like I said, who has people like that in my family, if I found out tomorrow one of my cousins who is a royal pain in the ass, or even someone closer than that, who I can name my family who was a royal pain in the ass, passed away under these types of circumstances, but the state gave me millions of dollars, I'd be like, well, it's a shame that happened to them, but I like these millions of dollars. Because it's almost like a relief. It's like when people have a family member that they love who's terminally ill for a long time, and then when they die, they feel bad because they feel good. Because it's over. They don't have to deal with that anymore. And that person's not suffering anymore. And that's normal. And I have to tell people so many times that's normal. What you're feeling now, this sense of relief, perfectly normal, doesn't make you a bad person. Same thing with that thing. If your troublesome family member gets himself in trouble, ends up dead, then you get millions of dollars for it. I doubt most of them would want him back if it meant giving the money back. And I know that's going to be controversial and I'm going to lose some people over that. But I know in that situation, if someone told me, hey, we gave you $10 million because we killed your cousin, but if you could have your cousin back, would you give us back the $10 million? I'd be like, no, thanks. So as far as Van Jones saying, George Floyd's life was worth more than that. Really, I mean, I know people do the all life is sacred and one life lost is too many, but is really anybody really worth that much? Is everybody worth everything? There's a lot of people out there and a lot of them are bad. I don't think it's a tragedy every time someone passes from this earth. Because some people just are doing nothing more than taking up space, and other people are actually making the world a worse place for being here. So I don't go for that crap that every life is, like when they say all lives matter, I'm like, do they really? I know some scummy people. I agree that black lives matter. I agree white lives matter. I agree Asian lives matter. I agree all that, with all those things in general. But there are some people who place themselves outside the equation because of their behavior. So I do not like the statement, all lives matter, because no, there's a lot of people that could just go away as far as I'm concerned. So, and I know this has been a little off topic here and I'm getting a little rambly, but I just want to let everyone know Chauvin has been sentenced. He's going to be serving 15 years. I think that's more than enough. I would have been okay if it was less than that, because I think the charge was a little over the top, that one murder charge. But that's what it is right now. I can't imagine why anybody on the pro George Floyd side would riot over that, because come on, that's a long time. A long time. Plus he's lost his livelihood, his career, his wife divorced him, etc. This man's life is in tatters and now he's going to be in prison. Take that as a win. Don't go out and riot and cause troubles because you think he got too light of a sentence. He got more than the required sentence, 10 years more. So let's just focus on that. And for people who think he got way too much, well, let's think about who we defend, because he's kind of a disgusting person. He's a person who wore the badge and abused his authority, had no regard for other people, had no regard for life that he was dealing with, the people he had authority over. So I don't see why people on either side of this will be too upset, because like I said, George Floyd is not an angel, not a saint. There's no reason to deify him. And the cop who did the bad thing to him has now been punished adequately, I do believe. Because he didn't intend to do what he did. It happened out of his own arrogance and his own negligence. And the family's been well compensated. Well compensated. And I know that nothing takes the place of a loved one you lose. That's heartbreaking. But let's look at what George Floyd's chances of living much longer were anyway. A drug addict with chronic health problems, heart problems, etc. Losing him could have been an any day now thing. At least this way they made a lot of money. And I know that's kind of cold-hearted, but it's people who live in situations where they have family members like this understand where I'm coming from. I've dealt with this. It's not me sitting on my high horse and looking down. I deal with this every day. So both sides, I think, should be content or at least accepting of what happened. So let's not see violence. And let's not see too much complaining, because like I said, be careful who you deify to the people who love George Floyd. And to the people who want to defend Chauvin, be careful who you defend. Because sometimes some people just aren't worth defending. All right, everybody, with that being said, I want to move on to my favorite part of the show, gun talk. And a lot of you already know that I bought a SIG AXG Scorpion. And I love this gun. This gun is awesome. I can't say enough good things about this gun. It's almost perfect. If it hadn't been baby ship brown collar, I would have said this is like a perfect carry gun. But it is baby ship brown. But luckily, that was easily remedied because they make another model now, which is the AXG Classic, which is the more traditional blued with the rosewood grips. So I bought this gun because the other one was so great. I thought this would be a great carry gun for my carry rotation. So I went out and purchased this, and as soon as I checked it out, I was not thrilled with it. It just did not feel as quality as the Scorpion. It felt a lot cheaper made. It wasn't something I could really put my finger on. It was just an overall didn't feel as good. And then after I sat and played with it for a little while, messed with it at home, I started realizing why it didn't feel like it was as good as the Scorpion. What was really making it feel different and not nearly as good was how it racked, how the slide moved. When you would rack the slide on the Scorpion, it was nice and smooth. You could really feel that it was smooth. You could hear that it was smooth. But when you did the same thing with the new Classic, before I switched out the thing in there, it was really gritty. You would feel it catching. You would actually feel that spring scraping and compressing. It wasn't smooth at all like the Scorpion was. Now, the first thing I started thinking was, well, maybe it's just because I've shot this gun a lot. I've put nearly 1,000 rounds through this gun. Really been shooting it quite a bit. So maybe that loosened it up. Maybe that smoothed it out. I don't remember it being that rough when I first got it. And I think I would have noticed that because I wouldn't think that's acceptable in such an expensive gun. But that's a possibility. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll change the internals from the Scorpion that I've actually shot a lot already, and I'll put them in the other gun, see if that makes the other gun as smooth as the Scorpion was, and vice versa. If the Scorpion is still rough, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, maybe it was the rounds, and then I'll fire several hundred rounds through the Scorpion again with the other internals, the new spring, the new firing control unit, and see if they smooth out. But when I went to take the internals out of the new Classic and put it in the Scorpion, I noticed a very big difference. The guide rod and the guide rod spring setup in the Scorpion and the Classic are very different. In the Scorpion, the front part of the guide rod assembly has a flat spring. The rear part of the assembly has a braided spring, whereas the recoil spring in the Classic is just a plain coiled spring. It's not flattened out, it's not braided, it's just a much cheaper version of the guide rod assembly. So I started thinking to myself, wow, did they go to a cheaper guide rod assembly because they thought the other gun was too expensive to make? If that's true, then that's crap, because the good gun should always have the good guide rod in it. You paid extra for these guns. These are not just off-the-shelf guns. This is supposed to be their custom works guns, their custom shop. So this gun should have the better parts in it. So I started thinking, well, did they switch to a bad guide rod, or did I happen to get an old guide rod that just happened to be around? Maybe they used the wrong one. Maybe they used one from a regular P320 instead of using the one they were supposed to with this gun. So I started looking around at the guide rods from SIG, and what I noticed is in all the advertising and in all the pictures of the SIG guide rods, it showed the one with the braided wire and the flattened spring, the nicer recoil assembly. So I'm like, well, did I just get an old recoil assembly or something? So then I ordered another one. I said, well, I'll just order another one, see if that comes in. Because after I shot 500 rounds through the Scorpion with the internals of the Classic in it, it didn't smooth out. It was still just as clunky and rough as ever. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and put the new guide rod in there and see if it makes it as smooth. Because maybe, like I said, I just got an old guide rod. And today I got my package from Sig Sauer. I had to order one and get it in to make sure that it was going to be the better one, the one with the flat spring and the braided wire, because the pictures could be wrong. The pictures could be old pictures on the internet, but the one I received, the new part, actually is the better one. So makes me think, once again, like I said, maybe I just got an old guide rod or something put in my gun, but that shouldn't have happened. But I'm going to put this one now in the Scorpion and see if that smooths it up. Because now remember, the Scorpion now has the internals of the Classic. It's the rough one now. The Classic is totally smooth because I put the old internals in it. So let's put this one in the Scorpion and see if it's as smooth now as the Classic is now. I know that was kind of a riddle there, but I think you all can figure out what I'm saying. Don't think I lost anyone. All right, out with the cheap coiled spring one and put in the new one. All right, yeah, right off the bat, this is much smoother, much cleaner, like the one that originally came in the Scorpion, which is now in my Classic. So it looks like that guide rod was the problem. That guide rod was awful. But now that I've changed it out, put the new guide rod in here, replacing that one that came with the Classic, which, like I said, I don't know if that was a throwback, if it's just something they put in by mistake. But this gun is a lot better now. It feels like it did originally with its original internals, because like I said, remember now it's got the Classic internals in there. But with that new guide rod, it's as smooth as can be. So both of these guns now are smooth. They both had great triggers. That feeling didn't affect how they functioned at all. It was just, it didn't feel like it should feel for a gun this expensive. It felt cheap. It felt like racking a Glock or something. And I just didn't think that was acceptable. Turns out that's not the way it should be. Maybe that spring, like I said, is just old. I'll have to ask Sig. But with the new spring in it, it's good to go. It's awesome as it was the first time. Now both these guns are silky smooth and feel like they should feel at this price point. And both of them are excellent guns at the range. That was true from the beginning, but now they actually feel like they should feel. They feel like quality in your hand. At least they both do now. Before it was just one of them that did. And you know what? These guns are so good at the range. If you pay attention here in the near future, you might just see, since I've got things worked out on it now, you might be seeing one of these being added to my daily carry rotation. All right, everybody, to end the show today, I just want to remind everyone that there's one day left after you see this video, unless you donate immediately after this video goes live, then you'll be in for tonight's drawing. But there's one day left from 5 p.m. tonight till 5 p.m. tomorrow, that's Pacific Standard Time, where you can donate to the animal charity fund that we're doing to get the free hat. If you go over and donate $5, you get one entry to in a drawing for the hats. We've got one more hat to give away tomorrow, and then we're done. And I'll be glad this is done, because I think we've milked this bull for all it's worth. We've helped 3 dogs now: Max, Natasha, and now we're donating to Stevie. And we originally started off just hoping we could help Max. So we did way more than we thought we could. So I just wanted to thank everyone who participated. If you haven't participated yet and you want to, you just have one more day and then this will be over. So I just want to say, like I said, thanks to everyone that's already participated and thanks to everybody who will before it's over tomorrow. All right, everybody, that's our show for today and our last show for the week. So I hope everybody comes back again Monday. Until then, I'll sign off as usual by saying, as far as the world today is concerned, it is what it is. It could be a lot worse, but it could be better. And what it will be if we continue to ignore the fearmongers, the profiteers, the people out there trying to serve their own selfish interests and not the interests of the actual gun community and the Second Amendment. If we continue to ignore those people and stop paying attention to them, what things will be in the very near future for people who believe in gun rights and freedom in this country is better.